Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me for the launch of the St John's poster competition. My name's Gaia, I'm the Schools Liaison Officer for St John's College. In a moment we'll be joined by some postgraduate students who are going to talk to you for a little bit about what an academic poster is, how to make one and how to do research online. But for now I'm just going to go through some of the details of the competition. So we would like you to do a small research project on a topic that interests you, and we'd like you to create an academic poster about it. This can be a physical poster or an electronic poster, but you must be able to upload a copy of it online. So if it's physical, you'll need to be able to take a picture of it. We would then like you to create a 3-minute video presenting your poster. The theme for the competition is green, and we would really like you to be as creative as possible with your interpretation of this theme. So whether that's something like climate change, photosynthesis, etymology of the word green, use of the theme in literature, use of the colour in history of art, we're just really excited to see how you might interpret it. You'll be asked to submit this via a form, which will be on our website. The competition is open to Year 12 state school students or those planning on applying for 2021 entry, and the deadline for the competition is the 7th of August. In terms of the judging criteria, there will be prizes in the form of book tokens for the best poster, the best presentation, the best research, and the best overall winner. And there will also be a gallery of the best posters on our college website. So on that note, I am going to hand over to our lovely PhD students who are going to talk to you a little bit about what an academic poster is and how to make one. Do bear in mind, of course, that these students are several years ahead in their research, so don't worry if anything seems a little bit complicated. We definitely wouldn't be expecting you to do quite as much as some of these students have done.
Hi, my name is Leon Zaporski. I'm a first-year PhD student in physics, and I work in the Quantum Optical Materials and Systems group under supervision of Dr. Claire Legol and Professor Mete Atature. Today I want to tell you more about the academic posters. The obvious question to ask is, what is an academic poster? Well, you have definitely heard about the academic conferences. These are events bringing together scientists with common background so they can share their latest results. Usually these are presented in one of the two formats, either a PowerPoint presentation given to a large audience, or a face-to-face talk with those interested specifically in your research. Such a face-to-face talk happens during so-called poster session, and as the name suggests, presenter is supposed to refer to the poster she or he prepared. When preparing such poster, you have to follow some basic guidelines. It needs to contain the title of your project and mention all the people involved in it. Then, of course, the content has to illustrate some key concepts and advances related to your work, preferably in a pictorial way. Almost always you will want to mention work done in other groups, and in such case you will need to include a list of papers you refer to. Before giving you more specific tips, I want to highlight what the key ingredient of an academic poster is. It is the narrative you build around it during your presentation. Bearing in mind that your narrative matters most, consecutive sections of the poster should closely follow it. It is up to you what is the starting point of your story, but it needs to be attractive also for those less familiar with your research topic. Ultimately, the goal of your poster presentation is to raise an interest in your research and to make people look forward to your next results. In my case, it is natural to start the story from talking about the end goal, a quantum memory. Quantum memory will open up new ways for completely secure transfer of information and will let the future quantum computers reach their full potential. Now, this is an exciting thing for every physicist I know, so it is probably a good place to start. The next step will be an introduction of a platform we want to turn into such hardware and the model behind it. In this way, me and my audience can adopt a common language. And then, when we're all on the same page, I can talk about limitations of existing solutions and advantages of the solution I work on. Research is a never-ending story, and even though you may find all the answers to the questions you've asked, you will always come up with some new questions. Mention them in the concluding sections. Try to make people excited about those. This will likely make them follow your work. So this is the poster I want to be talking about today. And I want to point you to the fact that in its file name it has this phrase final. So before it got into its final version, there were lots of drafts, and my teammates provided quite insightful comments on each of those drafts. And towards the end, I was able to come up with something that we would all be excited about and we would be all satisfied with. So here it is. And it may seem for now that it's quite crowded and there is lots of text, there is lots of figures, and they're all quite small. But actually, if you print it on A0 sheet of paper. So each of these white panels becomes like a standalone PDF file that you can navigate through. So you can see that this poster is made using some template, and this template was actually provided by my team, which I'm also thankful for, but it's inspired by the official template from University of Cambridge. So of course there is University of Cambridge logo and the name. There's also a logo beneath those panels. And overall you see there is some structure to it that is actually quite common across different academic posters. So you have title, you have authors, you have their affiliations, and then you have panels with subsequent sections that you will be guiding your narrative through. And then of course you have a list of references that I mentioned before and the funding agencies that support your research. So let us dissect this academic poster a little bit. As I said before, I'm starting with the motivation, and I outlined the end goal of the project, which is realization of a quantum state transfer, or in other words, building a quantum memory. And then I use fancy phrases like central electron spin or central spin scenario, which are meant to just put the work in a broader context, because as you can imagine, there are multiple ways to build a quantum memory, and I need to specify which one we try to follow. And then there's this little advertisement section, which outlines all the advantages of our solution and all our recent results. But you'd be probably surprised to see that straight after that, I included the section on limitations. And this is because I also want to put my specific contribution to this field in already quite a narrowed down context. The difference of what I'm doing to what we have already done is that I try to do it using different material. And this is because the old material has some limitations that we can't really go past. So in order to achieve even more spectacular things than those that we have already achieved, we need to most likely switch to this material. And then you can see that I put a lot of effort to actually describe the microscopic model that we use in order to understand the physics behind our system. And the reason I'm so meticulous about it is because the interaction that actually governs the dynamics in our system is quite a surprise. And it's quite a surprise to everyone. So lots of people will already get fascinated just by the form of it and just by the physical origin of it when I start talking about it in here. So as I said before, if your research touches on anything new or something that is not really popular among people in the research community, expose it, because it can lead to very interesting academic discussions. And then you can see that section 2 and section 3 have those square brackets with numbers in their titles. And this is because all of those contents are taken from the papers that I cite in here. So overall, I'm citing 5 papers in this academic poster, and not all of them are published by our group. So it's also common to refer to the research done by other scientists. So then, having discussed the modeling and the theory proposals together with numerical simulations, I go on to discussing the experimental data. And if you compare the area covered by those figures with the area covered by maps or text, you see that they actually take quite a lot of space. And there's a very good reason behind it, which is that the data is ultimately what matters in all of the research. So you want it to be nice and clean, such that people can distinguish all of the features you want to show them. So imagine that you chose those figures to be smaller than they are, and due to some technical errors, your printer didn't capture these two tiny peaks in here. It would be then very hard for you to convince your audience that those peaks are indeed in here, and therefore it would be harder for you to carry on with the narrative towards the next section, because the next section in my poster actually addresses the problem that this data indicates. So you want to be able to make this clean connection between panel 5 and panel 6, and for that you need your figures to look clear. So then the final section is the section about the future steps that we want to take. And as you can see, there's a design of a device that we want to manufacture, but there also is another bit of data. And now the reason we included another bit of data in here is because we don't want this final section to be just a daydreaming, just saying what we would like to do. We also want to be able to support it with experimental evidence from other research groups, and we want to make a strong case for why our ideas have a chance to work. So I hope it is clear to you now what narrative I tried to build behind this poster, and I don't claim this was the best one to have regarding a research project like this one, but it was definitely the most natural narrative for me to have about it. And because of that, when I go and talk about my research in front of this poster, I feel like it naturally supplements the flow of my ideas, and because of that I am able to maintain the clarity throughout the entire talk. And I think that's ultimately what really matters when presenting the poster. It's about how you sell it to others, because it won't sell itself, it's all about you. And if it naturally complements your inner voice, I think it's a clear prescription for a success in making people excited about the research you do. So let me now tell you a little bit more about the technical aspects of making your own academic poster. And let me start by telling you that actually universities very often provide some brand templates that you can reuse. So I searched through the University of Cambridge website and I did find a few templates. So I went for the simplest one that they had to offer. I open it and it looks like a regular PDF file. And if you want to edit it, I would recommend using Inkscape. I think this is pretty much a standard in the field. Then if you open it in Inkscape, it's just the regular editor. So I can select some areas, for example in this way, and edit the content. So let's set it to my first academic poster. And if you fancy, you can, for example, change the color to pink or, I don't know, orange. And now, if you haven't heard about Inkscape, there's a good reason to use it. It is because it can handle so-called vector graphics quite well. And you want to be using vector graphics across all your figures and across the entire poster, actually. So it's probably easiest to discuss what vector graphics is by the example. So as you can see here, I have a file that it's called not a vector graphics. So it's in PNG format. And if I open it, you see it's just a nice looking figure, but as you keep zooming in closer and closer, you see that there are visible pixels in here, so it doesn't rescale nicely. So then imagine you made your poster in a PNG file, and you printed it, and your figures didn't look smooth anymore. You want to avoid it at all costs, so you want to work with something that rescales nicely. And this is of course the feature of vector graphics. So now here I have the same figure saved as the vector graphics, and as I keep zooming in, you see that the quality stays quite nice, that all the features are sharp, there are no visible pixels, and I could actually be zooming in over and over, and this will remain in this nice sharp form. So this is why you want to work with it, and usually vector graphics will be saved in the PDF format or SVG format. Inkscape can actually handle both of them, and as I said, I think this is a pretty standard environment to use when you work with vector graphics. So if you do your research in science, then you'll most likely want to put some equations on your poster, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So in research community, what we use to generate mathematics and actually entire pieces of text with mathematics embedded in it is this language called LaTeX. So it's actually supposed to be pronounced LaTeX or something like that. And this is how you spell it, LaTeX. So if you want to learn LaTeX, I recommend you going through the tutorial on the website called overleaf.com. The main advantage of LaTeX is that, as I said before, it can really generate nicely looking equations. So of course you can say that I can do the same in Microsoft Word, but at some point when your mathematics gets quite involved, LaTeX has more of a functionality, so everyone simply switched to it, and I recommend doing the same. Okay, so what I'm using to compile LaTeX is this environment called Text Studio. This works well on Windows. I'm not sure if it works well on iOS, but if you work with iOS, I have experience working with TechShop. Nevertheless, try downloading Text Studio if you work with iOS. So let me type in an example equation in here. So as you can see, this code has a very similar structure to HTML. So you always type begin and name of the section, and this one will be simply an equation. I put a star at the end because I don't want to enumerate the equations. And let's go for something simple for now. So 2 + 2 = 4. Now if I'm ready to compile the file, I just click this green arrow, build and view. This environment Text Studio has a nice feature that it shows the compiled file on the side by the code. So maybe let us put something more involved as well. Okay, so now you see the second equation I put in here, if you've touched on quantum mechanics, you will recognize that those objects are simply cats in Dirac notation. So the fact that I'm able to implement them quite nicely in here is because there are many packages compatible with LaTeX, and there's this package called physics, which is just great for all quantum researchers. So then when we generated the file, it got saved to the PDF, so we can import it back in Inkscape. So let us go to our poster, and let us now click import the file called maths. And now important thing is that you need to change the import settings to this Poplar Cairo, otherwise you'll have some problems with fonts. We want to use the original font. Okay, there we go. Here are our equations. And now if you want to select just one of them, it's probably not the most intuitive thing in Inkscape, but apparently that's the only way to do it. You have to cover the one you're interested in with a rectangle. Yeah, I know this is quite weird. And then select entire PDF you've generated. You see it's quite long because there's also the page number that I didn't turn off. And then if you have both of them highlighted, you go into Object, Clip, Set, and you're left out with just the equation you were interested in. So then if I hold the control button and move around with arrows, you can see I can make it as big as I want. And at the same time, it also rescales nicely because it's in vector graphics. So this is why I'd recommend using LaTeX together with Inkscape. Besides the text and equations, you'll probably also want to embed some figures in your poster. So regarding generating figures, people use whatever they feel comfortable with. Many of them would definitely choose Matlab, Python, or Excel or Origin. And I use Python, and I have good reasons to do that actually. This is because Python is compatible with variety of libraries that can be very useful for very specific research purposes. And at the same time, there's a really nice library when it comes to plotting. It's called Matplotlib, and I encourage you to visit their website. There is this section where they list all the example plots they produced, and I'm sure that whatever type of data you want to illustrate, you will find something that you can very easily adapt from here. So in my case, I coded something that generates some data points, so I'm not uploading any measured data in here. And then let me run the code. And then it simply puts it on the log plot. So what I'd like you to look at is those equations that I also included. So this is, for example, the title of the plot, the x-axis label, the y-axis label. This maths is also coded using actually LaTeX. So that compatibility of this coding environment with other environments I use is a strong argument for why I think it's a good idea to use Python. So then if you want to save the figure, let's choose the folder. Remember to save it as a PDF again. And this is because, as I probably managed to convince you already, we want to really work with vector graphics. So now we can open it as a standalone PDF file. That's great. And let's import it into our poster design file in Inkscape. So we did everything as before, and here is our figure. Now, another cool thing about vector graphics and plots produced by Python is that, for example, if you don't have access to the code, but you have access to the figure and you don't like the color, you can still modify some aspects of this plot. So, for example, here I chose to work with simply this red line, and I don't like the color. So, well, let me change it to blue. There we go, it's blue now. So, and I can convince you once again that it rescales nicely under this dragging. Sorry, this was the background, so. Okay. As I keep enlarging it, it stays nice and sharp, and there are no artifacts, no pixels appearing. So let me now shrink it such that it fits the poster. Okay, that should be fine. We can get rid of those gray boxes in here, and now we can bring the figure here. Okay, that's great. So now we placed our figure in our poster, and it's all ready to make it nice and aligned. So with that, I'd like to conclude this mini tutorial, and I'd like to wish you all the success in your future academic presentations.
Hi, I'm Annie. I'm already a second-year PhD at St. John's from the Faculty of Asian and Middle Eastern Studies. Today I prepared for you some tips on how to make poster for humanities. Let's start. Firstly, the purpose of your poster should display the highlights and the main points of your essay, report, and research. Don't try to include everything, and don't copy and paste paragraph onto the template. You have to treat everything you put on the poster, images and text, in a way that is visually clear, accessible, and appealing. Consider only including thesis statements, topic sentences, and major examples and illustrations. The audience could be multidisciplinary, so you might have to define key terms or rephrase sentences to include definition phrases. You might also have to provide some background that you didn't in your report, which might have been targeted to people, for example, professors or your peers in your discipline. While making poster for humanities, you should take into consideration, firstly, the information or the message that it tries to convey, the visual design, and lastly, the delivery. When it comes to information, make sure that it provides an introductory summary or abstract. It defines the problem or issue. It emphasizes the news about the issue with detail, could be illustrations, examples, and so on. Presents the benefits of the solution. Translates jargon. Uses correct grammar and spelling. Chooses parallel or equivalent phrases and bulleted lists. Identifies key components of diagrams. When it comes to visual design, make sure that it explains and labels figures and graphs, persuades through message headings rather than low content introduction, results, and so on, foregrounds content, not background design or color, frames items with adequate blank space so that the organization of information is clear, formats equivalent items consistently, presents relevant images, not eye candy, enhances legibility through color choices and font size. When it comes to delivery, you must practice firstly how to present your poster. Interacting with the audience demands thinking on your feet, applying your social skills, and drawing on short, concise explanations without fumbling or mumbling. So, I recommend to practice 2, 5, and 10-minute versions of your poster presentation. Make sure you can sum up your poster's key points and conclusions in 2 or 3 sentences. Practice starting your spiel from different sections of your poster. Think about which parts of your poster will be the most challenging to explain. Anticipate people's questions and how you will answer them. While presenting your talk, make sure to greet people with a smile and show your enthusiasm for your work. Do not read directly from your poster or from a prepared script. Reading signals lack of knowledge to the audience. Use hand gestures to illustrate and reinforce key concepts and relationships. As you talk through your poster, use a pointer or your hands to refer to particular parts of your poster so that people can follow your talk. Do not put your hands in your pockets or behind your back. Spend extra time explaining the figures and tables on your poster. Summarize each section of the poster before moving on to the next section. For example, now I've described the need to XXX. I would like to explain the process we developed to do it. Maintain your professionalism. Thank people for listening and talking with you about your project. I hope that my tips were useful. Good luck with making your poster for humanities, and see you. Bye.
So just to share with you an example of a poster by one of our PhD students. Obviously you can see that it's got a lot of information in it. If I just zoom in a bit more. So obviously you've got the title and subtitle very clear, all the authorship information, and then all of the different sections have been broken down into bullet points. So it's set out really nice and clearly. There are tables of the data. There are images to obviously catch the eye. A section on results, more tables, really sort of displaying that data in the best way possible. Then just a discussion and conclusion at the end, just to really tie everything together. And then obviously these references right at the bottom, although if you wanted to, you could separate those out into a bibliography. We have here another poster from another of our great PhD students. This one is in spelling errors in peer-to-peer loan applications and probability of default. This is a computer science poster, but unlike the other one, it's obviously got fewer sort of figures and graphs and charts and stuff like that. Don't feel like you have to include graphs and charts if that's not the best way of presenting your data. Obviously, something like this is really great as well. So it's really simple. It lays out the outcomes of the research. It talks about the methodology of the research. It talks about where the data was from, which is really important. And it's also got the next step and the ethical and legal implications. So obviously this is quite a different poster, but just to give you like a couple of examples of what a poster might look like. So Michelle actually made a brief video introducing the ideas in this poster ahead of a presentation that she was going to give on it. It's a really good summary of the poster, so I just wanted to show it to you, just to show how you can summarize a poster like this in sort of a minute or less.
Hi, my name is Michelle Singhal Lee, and I'm a PhD candidate at the Cambridge Computer Lab. Tomorrow, June 2nd, I will be one of the presenters at the Alan Turing Institute AI UK Digital Poster Exhibition. As a part of the Compliant and Accountable Systems Research Group, my research focuses on the potential unfair and unethical bias and discrimination in machine learning algorithms. In my latest research, I analyzed open source peer-to-peer lending data and found that applications with spelling errors and non-standard language are more likely to default on their loans. This gives the lender soft information about relevant personality traits such as carelessness. But how do we separate this information from the impact of personal characteristics such as disability status or national origin? What types of discrimination risks are there in alternative and informal credit markets, such as peer-to-peer lending?
So hopefully that was helpful in just giving you a bit of an example of how you can summarise the information on your poster really briefly. I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our PhD students for sharing their work and knowledge with us for this session, so thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Sally Rowden and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Cambridge in social anthropology. I'm at St John's College, and today I'm going to talk to you about online research. And so I think that online research is how things are going to proceed for the foreseeable future with COVID, because we don't have access to libraries and we don't know how things are going to shake down over the next little while. But also these are just really good skills to have under your belt. And so I'm proceeding on the idea that you have access to the internet, maybe at home, maybe through your local library, maybe through your school. You might have access to some academic resources through those places, but you also might not. And so there's still a lot that you can do as an independent researcher, which is someone who's operating outside an institution. And so that's how I'm going to proceed today. So I guess this is things like open access journals, Google Books, researchers' own copies of their work are often made available as PDFs. And yeah, you might be able to find a kind of there's a couple of other kind of treasure troves that I want to show you along the way. Okay, so I guess the place where I want to start is that researching at university is different. What counts as a scholarly source is different from just a general source. And so I wanted to just take you through this quickly. So this is a nice piece from Berkeley Library talking about what is the difference between a scholarly source and a popular source. And so it's things like journals, academic books. These are vetted by other academics. So this, you're going to get kind of an authorized, this counts as knowledge. And it might be controversial knowledge, but it does count as an original contribution to knowledge within this discipline. So this peer evaluation also means that the particular styles of publishing mean that there's bibliographies, citations that you can really follow and do a deep dive into the topics that you're really interested in. So I guess when you're searching just for something online, you're not necessarily getting that. So what you're getting is not a kind of a contribution of knowledge within a discipline. You're getting the ranking from a search engine, you know, that matches a search query with term frequency and the number of web pages that the engine can access. So these aren't necessarily the right way to answer an academic question. So one of the things that you will have access to is certain types of ebooks. And so I thought that I would show you here, this is Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes, so an important political theory book. And within this, we're going to books and we're looking at any books. And what we really want is the free Google book. So let's look this up. And yeah, we can go and look at the original publication here. So it's all going to be here. You can see that this is going to be quite the pain to read. But, you know, the information is there for us, and this is in Latin, which is only so helpful. But anyway, so moving back to Project Gutenberg has digitized a huge number of texts. So it's always looking for something that's out of copyright, that was published a while ago. And this has the advantage of, it's published in English. And it's all here and you can search it. So that's really great. And so that comes to, I guess, another really important advantage of, let me just switch this back so I can talk to you properly. Of ebooks. So why would you use an ebook? One is that you don't have to go to the library, it comes to you, which is fantastic. And most of your course books will be available electronically. It will be surprising if they're not. And so you don't have to trek over to whatever library holds the book. The other thing that's so valuable is that you can search for terms or citations that you want to track down. So this is incredibly helpful. And the other thing is that a lot of libraries will have the kind of license where you can download a chapter or a section of the book and you can mark it up digitally yourself. So you can kind of annotate it, mark it up, follow it, highlight stuff, whatever you want to do to kind of work with the text yourself. So those are some things about, so it's incredible. It's like, and you can bookmark them as well. So you can kind of develop your own library, which is just great. So that's books. They take longer to come to publication than journals because journals are much shorter. And so why do you want to look at journal articles? Because they're published so much faster, they're vetted, and they're often where the kind of current debates are happening in your discipline. So they're great ways to come up to speed. The downside with journals is that there are just so many. So how are you going to find the journals that are relevant to you before you kind of, as you find your feet in what you're studying? So a great way to do that is to look for journals that have high impact, because this is going to be where the kind of top minds in your discipline are publishing regularly. So back to the shared screen for a moment. One moment, please. So if I pull here, this is a list of high impact journals in social anthropology, which is what I study. Now, not all of these are relevant to me, but I know that if I look at Cultural Anth or ARA or Current Anthropology or American Anthropologist, I'm going to find stuff that is relevant and that is really good to look at. It's going to be stuff that is relevant to me. And so these are easy to find. You're going to be able to find them by just doing your own internet sleuthing. So let's have a look at another way to track down what are the influential works that are worth citing. So let's have a look here. Let's say that I'm looking for Kantorawitz's King's Two Bodies, which is a political theorist from the 1950s. And so I know that that's when this book was published. But look at that number of citations. That's huge. That means that it's being used by a lot of people. And the other really great thing about Google Scholar is that you can get these citations right here, probably in quite close to whatever referencing system you need to use. And you can also plug them into the referencing system that you're using to log your readings for yourself. So back to, yeah, that's a lot of citations. How do I know which ones are kind of current for me? So let's have a look and plug in. I want to make sure that it fits my discipline, that I'm not getting a whole bunch of other stuff. Wow, there's a whole lot of things here. That's really interesting. Okay, and a lot of these are pretty recent. Okay, let me see if I can take this back. Okay. That's great as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff there of authors that I recognize. That's going to be interesting. What about if I say I want it to be recent? So I'm limiting the range there. And I know that this one here is going to be something that I want to read because it's really relevant to me. I know that author, and it's not cited by many people yet, but it was only published last year. So that's going to be useful to me. And I can just click through there and I can find views here. These PDFs are really helpful to track down as well. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you is you can also plug in, say that I want to look for this book and I'd like to look for a PDF of it because I'm searching for sections online. So I might be taken to the author's own site or some kind of other authorized clip. So I'm looking for that. And let's see here, it says PDF here. So I'm going to click through onto this. And yeah, it's here. So I'm going to be able to read this chapter and that's going to be a valuable resource to me. The other resources that I wanted to give you a quick tour of are that a lot of universities have open access resources. So this is one at CUP, and let's say I'm looking for citizenship here, but I want to show only open access. And so this is going to get me a crawl through things that I can access today. And so I can look through this and find things that are useful to me. The other thing I wanted to show you is that a lot of universities have encyclopedias of topics, so you can get a kind of a deep dive and up-to-date references that you can follow down yourself. So let's say here I am at the Cambridge Encyclopedia of Anthropology, and I'd like to look up some stuff on sexuality. I'm going to plug in queer, and it's going to come up with queer anthropology, so I can follow this through, and we get here. It's a really great overview, and down the back, here are all the references that I can use to make a kind of a dive through. So you get this sense of how I'm setting up a kind of treasure hunt for myself each time. Another really great one that you might want to have a look at is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which is just a really great overview of all kinds of topics. So two other things very quickly is that I wanted to show you Library Hub Discover, which again has access to all kinds of online freely available resources. So you can track that down. And another one that is incredibly useful is Open Culture, which has all kinds of online courses, lectures, it's got people reading their own work, lots of really interesting free movies, and loads of ebooks down here. So I recommend it very highly. There's textbooks here as well. So there's all kinds of resources here. It's quite the treasure trove, so it's really worth looking at. So the other thing that I wanted to say to you just in closing is that something that isn't talked about nearly often enough is that reading is different at university as well. And so it's different from how you read on your phone, or it's different from how you read novels or for pleasure. And one of so you have to kind of learn different strategies for how to do this, and there'll be a link for this at the end as well. But the kind of way to crack the code on this is you need to read the introduction of the article and read the conclusion, so you know the points that they're trying to make, and then you can skim through the body of it and decide whether you need to read it more closely. And that works for books as well. So if you start with the intro, then read the conclusion, and then read the chapters where they build their case, it's a much more efficient way of reading. And then you can go through and read more closely if you want to. All right. Hey, thank you for making it to the end with me, and really good luck on your applications to university, all the luck in the world. And I hope to see you at St. John's College in Cambridge, where I know that you'll get a rigorous education that will last you your life. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Great, so thank you so much, Sally, for that. That was really helpful. Just finally, a few tips on where to start. So obviously Sally gave some really great suggestions of some resources there, but I just wanted to put a few of these things up as well. I think for sciences it can be quite difficult to know where to start, particularly because a lot of scientific journals are at quite a high level. But actually what's quite important to remember is that a lot of the scientific magazines out there, so like Nature magazine, New Scientist, Scientific American, a lot of them will have some really useful resources because they tend to have some plain language summaries of some of the scientific knowledge that's in there. So those can be a really great place to start if you're not really sure what you want to be doing your research project in. Of course, sciences aren't the only things that have magazines. I've got a History Today up there as well, would be a great place to start for history. Just have a quick look around and see if you can find any magazines that would be useful places to start off some of your research. I've also just popped up there the Very Short Introduction series. They tend to be, as the name suggests, a good short introduction to a topic, and obviously in the back they'll have a bibliography with lots of recommendations of other good places to do some research from. I've also added TED Talks and podcasts. Don't forget that there are some really great places to sort of spark your interest in topics that you might not necessarily have thought of. If you've still not got any idea where to start exploring your subject further, then why not check out our supercurricular activities video, which is on the Open Days page of the St John's website. Thank you so much for joining us for the St John's poster competition launch. I really hope that you've enjoyed it, and we're really excited to see your submissions. Thanks, bye!